Okay, so let's start again here. We have just gotten done with the birth of 12 of Jacob's children, his first 11 sons and one daughter. And his 7 years of service for Laban are up. I'm not sure how long they've been up, but they're up. And now he's going to want to go back. He's not going to go back yet, but he wants to go back. He's ready to go back. He is nothing but a hired hand here. He's got an inheritance waiting for him back in his homeland. He was given the birthright and the blessing by his father. So he has an inheritance. And we read earlier about how rich Isaac was. Isaac was a very wealthy individual. It says that God gave him 100 times, He blessed him 100-fold. So Isaac has lots of stuff. And that stuff is going to be Jacob's. If Jacob can go back there. But here, where he is with Laban, he's just a hired hand. He's a hired hand with a lot of wives and a lot of small children, and he doesn't have much to feed them with. Doesn't have much money to feed him with because he's just getting wages from Laban now. But he has a huge inheritance waiting for him back home. What was I going to say? I thought I was going to say something. Oh, now when Rebekah sent Jacob out here, she only intended him to be gone for a few days until his brother's anger towards him had cooled. Apparently, she never sent word back to Jacob again that Esau's anger had cooled. I don't know if Jacob was waiting for that. I mean, we read that Jacob was with Laban for a month, not getting paid and doing work and staying there and not paying to stay there. And then after a month, they worked out an arrangement. Maybe Jacob was waiting for word to come that it was okay to come back. His mother said that she would do that. His mother said that when Esau's anger towards Jacob had cooled, that she would send for him to have him come back. And she said even it'd be a few days. Yeah, maybe she didn't think. Esau may have been a very temperamental man who went from one mood to another quickly. So she may have thought that he would calm down soon and send for Jacob again. And apparently Jacob was maybe waiting for that, because he apparently stayed at Laban's for a month without paying or being paid until they finally realized that, hey, this is going to take a little bit longer than we thought, so we will need to work out a more permanent arrangement. We have that sort of thing happens today. I've lived in this apartment for 17 years now, but how many times do you have a situation where someone might move in to stay for a month or whatever until they can get their own place, and then it ends up lasting like 2 or 3 years or whatever? It's like it's very easy for situations like that to quickly get out of control, or I should say get out of control earlier or more quickly than you might expect them to, and then you don't have any easy way out of the situation. So it could be that Jacob was at first thinking he'd go back pretty soon, and then he realized that he wasn't. Then he made an arrangement to Laban to work for him for 7 years for Rachel, and that ended up doubling to another 7 years. And now he's ready to go back, but he's going to end up being tricked into working for Laban again for another several years. So the few days that he was supposed to be gone ends up being more than 20 years. Anyway, so he says to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination." Now, divination was a forbidden practice, or at least it will be forbidden in the law of Moses. I'm assuming that we're supposed to assume that because he's learning by divination, Laban is not altogether a good guy. Up until now, Laban has been portrayed relatively positively. Now, yes, he pulled the switcheroo on Jacob back in the wedding feast, but you can make the case that Jacob's just getting what he got. He pulled the old switcheroo on Esau, so now he's getting what's coming to him by having someone else pull a switcheroo on him. And Laban was portrayed very positively when we first saw him back in the days of Rebekah and Isaac courtship, if you want to call that a courtship. So up until now, Laban has been portrayed basically positively, but by mentioning divination, I think we're supposed to now start wondering just how admirable and honorable he really is, because divination, at least in Moses' time, was a forbidden practice. Now, I'm not sure if it was explicitly forbidden to these people of Jacob's time, but to Moses' audience, his original hearers, they would have heard divination. They were supposed to frown on that. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, I was looking at a footnote down there, but it's not too important. He added, name your wages and I will pay them. So he wants him to stay. He wants him to keep working for him because Laban has benefited from having Jacob work for him. So Jacob said to him, you know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? He's got all these wives, and he's got all these children. And these are small children still. These are not grown men. These are not young men. These boys would have still been very small at this point. Some of them would have been newborns, probably, or very close to it. But we talked about Reuben going out to the field getting some mandrakes. I don't know how old he was, but he couldn't have been very old. Based on the timeline, he's only a few years old. So yeah, his sons are all small children. He has a bunch of small children to think of and can consider. What shall I give you? Laban asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied. But if you will do this one thing for me. So he is going to say one thing here. I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. So Jacob the deceiver is now having to learn to be an honest man. My honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen. So he wants these, and he's going to breed them and make more of them. And if he has any that don't fit the physical criteria, they're not going to be considered his. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. That same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. So he just, okay, that's what you want, so I'll just take it all away from you. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks. So Laban has swindled Jacob. Jacob, however, took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees, and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs, so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself, and did not put them with Laban's animals. I have no idea what any of this means, by the way. I am not a shepherd. I know nothing about the mating habits of sheep and lambs and goats and what these branches are supposed to do. If they do anything, this may just be something that Jacob thought they did. Jacob may have thought this did something even though it didn't. I don't know. I have no idea what any of this means. So if you're looking for someone to give you an intelligent breakdown of this section, I'm not that guy. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban. He is trying to get a flock for himself because Laban stole the part of the flock that he asked for. So I can tell you that much. But exactly what he's doing here with this branch method, I don't know. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals, so they would mate near the branches. If the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong came once to Jacob. So I guess he's luring away the better of the crop away from Laban. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous, and came to own large flocks, and maid servants, and men servants, and camels, and donkeys. This was a very goods-based economy. You didn't really necessarily have a lot of money exchange. You had some gold and silver, but your wealth was measured based on your goods, how much stuff you had, how many flocks you had. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. Uh-oh, that's a problem. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. So back here, a few paragraphs ago, Laban wanted Jacob to stick around because he was so useful to him. Laban doesn't think that anymore. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So it's time for him to go back. He wanted to go back a few paragraphs ago, but now the Lord is ready for him to go back. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah. So this is where they've lived, by the way. This is all they've known. This is their lives. This is Laban as their dad. This is where they've lived all their lives. They've never been to where Jacob came from. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. So he wants them to come out of their tents and go join him in the fields. He said to them, not because he wants them to join in the work, that wasn't women's work, but he wants to conspire with them away from where Laban might have ears that could hear. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude towards me is not what it was before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. So Jacob is having to learn honesty because he's spending so much time working for a cheater. Jacob himself was a cheater and a deceiver, but he's being made honest by having to work for and be under the authority of someone who's more dishonest than he was. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said, the speckled ones will be your wages, and all the flocks gave birth to speckled young, and if he said, the streaked ones will be your wages, and all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. So we just saw a few sentences describing what's going on, but they've been having back and forth about this all along. There was a lot more contention going back and forth between these flocks than what we read about. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah replied. So he's going to leave, okay? No way is he staying here any longer. But these women that he's married to, his wives, they're from this area. Laban is their dad. This is all the life they've ever known. So he's basically putting it to them. Do they want to come with him or not? Do they want to come with him to where he goes, to where he has an inheritance waiting for him? Or do they want to stay with their father? Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Apparently they patched up their differences, or at the very least they're united in their opposition to their father. I mean, they both have a vested interest in Jacob getting as much as possible. And if their father is cheating Jacob out of his wages, then he's cheating them out of their wages, their more comfortable lifestyle too. Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. So they're not going to stick around with Laban any longer. Their loyalty has shifted. Both of them now are firmly behind their husband and not their father. I don't know if they still have problems with each other. I don't know if they've come together or if they still have, because we saw they had definitely had disputes with they were in contention with each other, pretty harsh contention with each other, and I don't know if they are still or not. They've had their children now. They're done having children. I don't know if that issue is behind them or if they're still in contention with each other, but they're united in their opposition to their father's treatment of their husband. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. I don't know where Rebekah is. I'm assuming Rebekah probably has died in the years in between. We never hear from her again. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Those are his idols. So Laban is an idolater. We read earlier about him practicing the art of divination, which was forbidden. It was forbidden to the Israelites later. I'm assuming it was forbidden now, or at least it was considered taboo. It was going to be expressly codified as forbidden later on. And we read that Laban had done that. Now God sometimes did communicate through divination. He did not want people to do it. He forbade them from doing it, but sometimes when they did it, he would communicate his will to them that way. Apparently he did that with Laban. Again, I'm not sure if Laban knew that divination was forbidden. I'm not sure if divination was explicitly forbidden. Probably. We haven't read a specific command not to do it here. We will later. But even still, even if it's a forbidden way of communicating God, God can still communicate that way if he wants to send a message to the person who's doing it. But we know that Laban was a divination practicer, and now we know that he is in fact an idolater because he had household gods, which Rachel stole. So Rachel has some of that idolatry in her too. So when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, and crossing the river, that is the Euphrates, he headed for the hill country of Gilead.